a world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Thursday, the 9th of June, year of our Lord 2026. Well, Donald Trump said he would be a great communist, and now he is following the model of Mom Danny. Mom Danny wanted to open up grocery stores so people could afford groceries in New York City. We're not going to talk about the high cost of living and taxes in New York City, anything that they are the root cause of. And so in the same way, as Trump is restarting the Iran war, he's talking about how he's going to make gas affordable again by opening up a network of gas stations. Has he opened up some new gas stations? What is going on with this? We're going to take a look at his Freedom Fuel, as well as how he is fueling war again in the Middle East, as well as in Ukraine. We'll be right back. And Lance just reminded me it is July the 9th, not June the 9th. And again, if it was June the 9th, he would have a little bit more time, the Republicans would, to do something about Mitch McConnell. But now they're left with nothing to do but to do a weekend with Bernie's type of approach. And we had a comment yesterday, and it was it's kind of interesting because I was looking at this. I absolutely couldn't believe it because I'd not seen these comments before. You got everybody from this, from Scott Jennings, who is a conservative Republican commentator for CNN, who has absolutely zero credibility. And he shredded anything that he might have left at this point out there saying, yeah, we spoke about everything and all the rest of the stuff. You've got different Republican congressmen and senators saying they've called and talked to Mitch McConnell. I don't believe that at all, by the way. And Thomas Massie was joking about as well. C.J. Prumble yesterday said, did anybody see Massie's post about speaking with Mitch yesterday? Massie said, I spoke to Mitch McConnell for 20 minutes this morning. All of them spoke for 20 minutes. That's what Joe Scarborough says. He said, you can't find a Republican politician or a right-wing commentator who doesn't say that they spoke to Mitch McConnell for 20 minutes. This guy is the biggest cardiac arrest patient in terms of conversation. You just can't stop the guy from talking, right? Anyway, Massie said, I spoke to him for about 20 minutes this morning. He said we should end the war with Iran, stop aid to Israel, and stop spying on Americans without a warrant. That's so funny because, of course, Mitch McConnell, who is the longest serving Senate leader, would absolutely not be on the side of any of those issues.
And I don't know if Massie said that or if that was just C.J. Prumble making a joke of something that Massie might say if he were to pretend to talk to him for 20 minutes.
I don't know, he said it was Massie's post, but anyway, that would be exactly the sort of thing I would expect from Massie. He's got nothing to lose. The Zionists already took the election from him. Well, let's take a look at what is going on, of course, in the Middle East. And what you hear in the Middle East is Trump parroting exactly what the Zionists, the Grimer Wormtongues of Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, and of course, Jonathan Pollard. You got to finish what you started. Actually, it's what they started. You got to finish it. Got to finish the job. And that's what he's saying. Got to finish the job. So he is escalating the war yet again. And of course, Gerald Celente and I didn't really buy I think this is a real plan for peace. At the most, it was Trump buying some time to try to keep gas prices from exploding during the summer. And, he's gotten so much flack, I guess he decided to cut even that short. Trump's decision to move forward with more strikes against Iran today was due in large part to his anger over the Strait of Hormuz not being fully open yet. I mean, we can look at his motivations. Who knows? As I said yesterday, he was really angry and really trolled over all this football, soccer stuff. over the weekend, and he was absolutely humiliated and mocked by everybody in the world. But he's also got his Zionist masters who said, wait a minute, what do we pay you for, right? And of course, as many people point out, there's some interesting timing in just a matter of hours between judges ruling about some Epstein documents and the fact that Trump restarts this. So who knows what it's about? But we do know that it's not about anything that is legitimate. And when you talk about the strikes against the freighters, that is evident, what they're pointing to as the restart of this. It is nothing at all like what has been going on in Lebanon by Israel. As a matter of fact, there was nobody hurt. Nobody died. Supposedly, one of the ships, which was a gas, a liquid natural gas carrier, was set on fire. It's very easy to set those on fire if you hit them with anything, I guess. But I was questioning, what? We don't have any details about this. It's like 3 ships were hit. It's like, hit? How? How much damage? How many people died? Well, nobody died. That's now coming out. So, but because of that, we have to have an escalation of the war. We have to have basically carpet bombing, which is what's going on right now. This is in Iran. Yeah, if only the bombing campaigns and the massive attacks against civilians worked. But they don't. As a matter of fact, I've talked before about the book Bombing to Win. It's a guy who was not a military guy, but he just went back and he looked at the history of several of these wars like that we've lost, like Korea, like Vietnam. And he said, what did they say? They dropped massive amounts of ordnance. They basically bombed North Korea into dust. But we didn't win that war. And we didn't win the war in Vietnam either. So as you look at this, Trump is warning on social media that the attacks are going to get much worse. He said, told reporters that Iran called a little while ago and they want to make a deal so badly. How many times have we heard that? How many times have we heard Trump reverse himself in the same day? How many times have we seen reports of what's really happening prove that he's a liar? Iran's ambassador condemned the latest spike of U.S. strikes, calling them a clear violation of the U.S. Charter and its international obligations, launched and continued to carry out large-scale military attacks. And again, when you start a war, it's unjustified. End of story. No exceptions. No exceptions at all. If you start the war, you own it. And it's not a just war. And if you continue the war, when you have an opportunity to end it, it's also not justified. That's the argument I was making about Gaza from the very beginning. You could say that, from the very beginning, we had information about how the Israelis had killed their own people and had no remorse about it. And many people said, well, maybe, what's the deal with this? How did this border here, how did it get breached so easily? Well, you can armchair quarterback that. Who knows what happened with that? I mean, it could have been a Pearl Harbor setup, or it could have been a real issue. But nevertheless, that's not even the issue as to how it started. The issue is that it continued incessantly. And the issue is that it targeted civilians. Those are 2 qualifications that make a war unjust. Whether or not it is a genocide, and I believe it is a genocide, and I've said so many times. But that's what's going on in Iran as well, because we're fighting the rules of the Zionists. And this is so unpopular that, especially in America with American Jews, that you've got Netanyahu's son changing his name. He's in Miami in the lap of luxury, while other Israelis are fighting the war for him, and he has to even change his name. Trump also said Wednesday that whether the U.S. will pull more troops out of Europe will depend on Greenland. He still won't give that up. He did not provide specifics, but he reiterated his desire for the territory. Got to have the territory. Got to have it. Iran's regime is now, however, stronger than before Trump's war. And this is coming from the Telegraph in the UK. It's an excellent summary of this. The president's threats will not change the new reality of Tehran's grip on the Strait of Hormuz. When you look at the different metrics that they've had, right? Well, we got to stop them from getting a nuclear bomb. They're just hours away. You know, we've heard that from Netanyahu for 30 years, right? It's just a couple of days, maybe a month. What was that? Whoa, something really shot through the system. Anyway, we've heard that for the longest time, and yet it's not true. Demonstrated over and over again that that was a lie by reality. It was only 3 weeks ago that Trump signed the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, designed to end the war with Iran. But now he has declared that the agreement is over, and he has denounced its Iranian signatories as scum, liars, and sick people. Projection. He's projecting onto them what he is, basically. But he is verbatim quoting Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, and the Zionist mouthpieces here in the United States. The 14-point memorandum was a hollow shell of an agreement to start with. It settled nothing. As a matter of fact, Israel did everything they could to sabotage it, not just with their propaganda mouthpieces like Levin and Shapiro, but also with continuing and escalating the attacks in Lebanon. And that was a part of the agreement as well. They want territory, they'll kill anybody to get it, and they will initiate the force to do it. For Trump, his sole purpose was to allow him to claim a victory. And here's the thing, over and over again, just like the clip I played yesterday, there was a American Jewish guy who said, here's what Zionists are doing, because understand there's a difference between Jews and Zionists, right? Especially the revisionist Zionists, which is the branch that Netanyahu is part of. They want war first. They don't want to do anything. It's not just they want the territory, but they want to initiate war. We don't even want to talk to anybody. Just kill them all and take the land. That's revisionist Zionism. It's like radical Islamic terrorism, just a different wrapping. And so the issue of free navigation through the strait may not have sunk the deal. Iran had sought to enforce a new reality whereby it dictates exactly how and why, exactly how and by which route any tankers might pass through the waterway. And that is what Trump has handed them, and Israel, Netanyahu. Because when you look at this, all the justifications, we got to change the regime. How is that working out for you? You know, take a look at the funeral that they had. And it is absolutely amazing how large the crowd was that was there. This is a regime that they thought they could overthrow it. Maybe the protests before were organic. I mean, there certainly is enough reason to protest that horrible government in Iran. But Americans should not go abroad looking for monsters to destroy. That is a foolish path, and we were warned not to do that. But we ignore that warning. We ignore the warning about entangling alliances as well. But if they wanted the Iranian people to overthrow the Ayatollah, they shouldn't have commenced a civilian bombing campaign. That always consolidates people, even behind the worst leaders, because then they see those leaders as their only defense against this external enemy. And so when you look at the funeral that was held for the Ayatollah, it was unbelievably massive. As a matter of fact, what they did was not to change the regime, but to generate loyalty for the regime. That's their outcome. Look at this. It's amazing how large the crowd is. This is for the funeral of the Ayatollah. They're just now doing it because there was a lull in the fighting for a while. It just goes on and on and on, and there were a lot of signs up there about killing Trump. So, but that's not why he started this. Not at all. And so, as we look at that, think about regime change. Now you got people in the streets mourning the guy that they wanted to throw out of office, if those previous things were real, and I think they were. And they also used themselves as human shields when Trump said he was going to destroy their infrastructure. The people turned out en masse at the power stations and other infrastructure facilities to say, well, if you destroy that, you're basically dropping a bomb. That's a real tough gambit because just watch out. We got Pete Hegseth in the Pentagon. He would love to do that. He boasts about killing civilians. 3 ships were sought to use the southern lane, which is closer to Oman, rather than Iran's officially approved route. And so apparently, this is the only time I've seen anybody report what apparently happened. And again, we have to take a lot of these reports with a grain of sand because we don't know what actually happened. Striking 2 with missiles and a third one with an armed drone. And one of them, a liquid natural gas shipper, was set ablaze. During his war with Iran, Trump shredded anything that might have remained of his personal credibility, says the UK Telegraph. And that is absolutely true. His roller coaster ride of pronouncements ranged from threatening to ending Iranian civilization and blowing up all the country's power stations, issuing expletive-strewn demands for its crazy leaders to reopen the straits. It is something else we see from the Zionists. It's something that the guy yesterday pointed out. He said, when they attack Gaza and they're committing genocide, the difference between them and most of the other people who have done that type of thing is they portray themselves as victims. And he said, of course, I think the Nazis did that type of thing as well. They had a sense of victimhood that was based to some degree in reality because of the Treaty of Versailles and the punitive attitude that the victors took. But you got to ask yourself, how can you be victor and victim at the same time? That is the Zionist approach, and that is the Trump approach. Perhaps they schooled him on this. The greatest irony is that Iran's regime is now stronger overall than when the American-Israeli onslaught began on February 28th. So, according to Trump himself, he boasted and continues to boast that there's nothing left but nuclear dust. And he said we could go in and we could take it, but it would just be a PR event. They don't have any ability to do anything. So what is that about? So that's a false justification. Regime change is false justification they didn't get, but what did they do? As he points out here, no Iranian leadership had ever tried to impose an extended closure of the Strait of Hormuz, but now that is the basis of their power. That Strait of Hormuz is the basis of their power, and they know it, and they're going to keep it. And they're going to control the ships that go through there, and they're going to also charge them a toll. And that is the result of all of this. Not any regime change, but a radicalized and more popular regime instead. So they proved that Iran could not only enforce a blockade, but they could do a selective one, allowing their own tankers to pass through safely. As a matter of fact, when we look at the blockades, at the sanctions, whether it's Biden or whether it's Trump, they never work. They never work. When you look at what Biden did with all the economic sanctions, what was the end result of that? Well, the end result was that Russia started accepting payment in gold rather than in U.S. currency. And the entire world system accelerated its gradual move away from the U.S. dollar because they said we don't want to have the levers of power shutting us off. The same type of thing they seek to do with CBDC. And, they can basically debank entire countries with the SWIFT system. So people say, we don't want to be a part of this system. They started accumulating gold. And so Putin said, if you pay for your oil in gold or in Russian currency, we'll give you a big discount, like 30%. And he could do that and still make like 25% more on the oil that he sold versus the point at which Biden put the sanctions on. Same thing is happening with this as well. As a matter of fact, it's not just a pricing issue that's there. But they point out in this UK Telegraph article that before the war, Iran was selling and transporting out 1.7 million barrels per day. Throughout this war, that production went up, and they were able to get out, produce as well as export 1.8 million barrels a day. So Trump's sanctions and blockades were absolutely ineffective. And they don't want to end the Ayatollah, and they have now been galvanized to understand that the only way they're going to be left alone is if they have nuclear parity. So that is what is the result of this war. Iran's regime evidently feels confident enough to fire missiles at any disobedient tankers who are trying to navigate the strait without following its rules. And why would they do this and risk a justification for retaliation? Well, I think they're very concerned and paranoid that there might be some kind of a sneak attack with some of these tankers. Who knows? But I'm not trying to make excuses for what they do. Nevertheless, that is what is the reality there. That has become a lever of power now. As Trump and Israel turned the Strait of Hormuz into a massive lever of power. They control the spigot, and they can cut off the world's oil supply, just like that. So Iranian leadership has just survived 13,000 American airstrikes and more than 10,000 strikes from Israel during 40 days of perhaps the most intensive aerial onslaught in history. And what has been the result of that for us? You know, when Biden did the sanctions against Russia, Putin wound up making more money. He had a windfall of hundreds of billions of dollars because the price went up and he got paid in gold instead of in U.S. fiat currency. So what is happening with this? Well, they get a new lever of power. And what do we get? A new bill. We're running out of money. The Pentagon is running out of money. And of course, Americans have to pay for the Pentagon. So we are, by extension, running out of money. Defense officials have asked for more than $67 billion in supplemental funding. Congress has not approved the money yet, in part because of frustrations over the information about the war with Iran, sources say. Well, we can't tell you what we're doing. And we're not going to ask for your permission. We're not going to ask for a declaration of war. As a matter of fact, remember we talked about this, that you had the warmonger party and the Zionist mouthpieces of Levin furious saying, I'm a constitutionalist, said Mark Levin. They've got to have, this is like a treaty. You can't have this peace with Iran without having the Senate vote on a treaty. So we can have the president declare and start a war without Congress, but you can't have peace, says Mark Levin, without having an act of Congress. So the Trump feds always throw money at everything. In this particular case, they're throwing bombs at everything, and that translates into money. And they're out of it. You know, $67 billion is only a fraction of what they have burned up, right? This Trumpster fire, worse than a dumpster fire. And they're not bombing to win. That was the name of the book that talked about the fact that if you focus on civilian populations and infrastructure, that is a losing tactic. And Iran focused more on the eyes of the missile defense systems and on military bases. That is the path to winning. But if you focus on civilian population, it blows back on you every time. And so, you know, when we look at this, I saw this, I kind of thought, well, this is kind of like, where's Tennessee Ernie Ford? We need him right now. You know, you drop 16 tons, and what do you get? The war's a day older, and you're deeper in debt. Hey, BB, don't you call me, because I can't go. I owe my bombs. There are no bombs in the company stove, right? We're all out of them, fresh out of it. I need some more money. Send more money for Israel, more money for the Pentagon, and it never ends. It is a black hole and a black budget that we can't see. So you beg help for NATO. That's the other part. So then Trump goes to NATO and he says, I've got to have some help. And he does it right live on the stage. Scott Besson is there and he goes, and so I want you to, stop all trade with Spain. I don't like what they said. They won't come to my aid. He's bragging about how invincible he is. He's bragging about his victory, but again, he is a victim. And so it's desperation, stupidity, and blood. That's what these people are bringing us over and over again. And really, as this article points out, what's left for them to do? Are they going to do more of the same? I mean, you look at arguably the most intensive bombing campaign in history, the most ordnance dropped in the shortest period of time. Didn't work. Didn't work at all. Trump is boasting, yeah, we got another 6 boats of their Navy and everything. Well, hasn't he said over and over again that their Navy, quote unquote, if they ever had one, was completely destroyed? So what's that about blowing up 6 more ships there? I thought you already got them all. And so Mark Levin is calling for the one thing that hasn't been tried, and that is American blood on the ground. Talk about it as blood on the ground, not boots on the ground.
We had battles where there were 50,000 casualties in 2.5 days. Think of Gettysburg. Think of Vicksburg.
I think you're reprehensible.
The Battle of Bull Run, 2 of them in the same place. Over 700,000 casualties in a nation of 24 million people. Abraham Lincoln was under intense pressure.
It was his war, just like this is Trump's war.
At one point, the Union was stuck. The people were starting to rise up. There were draft riots in New York.
He imposed income taxes. He stopped habeas corpus.
General who could win.
He locked up the opposition. He would have been a great Zionist partnership, wouldn't he, Abraham Lincoln? As a matter of fact, when you look at this guy's broadcast, you see he's got a picture of that despot. And, you know, we've had these fourth-turning presidents, whether you're talking about Lincoln or FDR, they're always warmongers, and they always destroy the country economically. And they always consolidate power. Trump is such a president. He is in the mold of FDR and Abraham Lincoln. And I do not give that as a compliment. That is the harshest criticism I could give any president.
It's a really amazing clip. Could have played more of it. He goes on to praise, just how he didn't care about the draft riots, got to draft them anyway, have them just slaughter all these people. And then he goes on about how great it was to burn Virginia.
Yeah, he hates this country, quite frankly, and he hates the Constitution. Mark Levin. Levin and Life and Liberty and Levin, right? No, Levin is against life. He is against liberty. And he's against the Constitution, frankly. I cut it short because I just can't stand to listen to that guy's voice. Trump has more firepower under his command than any leader in American history. Yet, his uniquely feckless approach to waging war has contrived to leave his enemies stronger. If there's another round of this conflict, Iran's regime will become a superpower, right? No, he doesn't say that. But, when you look at that, feckless is the right word. Both friend and foe say that Trump is weak and ineffective. Zionists criticized him for that, and they're right. And the people who want peace and the people who put America first say that, and they're right as well. Yes, when we look at all of this, it's just like Vietnam. 1, 2, 3. What are we fighting for? Don't ask me. I don't give a damn. Next stop is Vietnam. And that is exactly the attitude of this administration. So it's so bad that Netanyahu's son has had to change his name. Perhaps Bibi Netanyahu will have to do that next, or at least there's a lot of places where he can't have domicile because he is recognized as an international war criminal in many jurisdictions, not in the U.S., but even Jewish Americans, the majority of them don't like Netanyahu. As a matter of fact, they like when they asked what you thought of different leaders, there was more support from Jewish Americans for Mamdani than for Netanyahu. And why is that? Well, I think it's because you have the American Jews are predominantly left-leaning. They're not like radical Zionists. And so we're going to take a quick musical break, folks, and we'll be right back.
losing free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
In July of 1896, exactly 130 years ago, I warned this great nation of the government's plan to crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. Of course, that was before they started to bleed us dry with the death of 1,000 fiat paper cuts. But after you bought every single commemorative David Knight Show coin in gold color, the podcast's gold reserves are depleted. They issued 100 numbered gold-colored coins and declared the mint closed. The people cried out, "Free silver!" Well, the likes of J.P. Morgan can't stop this all-new commemorative coin. Now in silver color, while supplies last, this commemorative coin does not contain precious metal, but does keep the show on the air. Equal to the gold color, this limited run is numbered 1 to 100. Get yours today at thedavidknightshow.com. Hurry, because supplies are disappearing quicker than the purchasing power of the dollar.
And we still have some. I got one right here in my hand, but they're going fast. And I want to get to some of the comments there. Guard had a great comment. Guard Goldsmith, Liberty Conspiracy, said point 5 of the Memorandum of Understanding literally grants Iran control of the Strait. Yeah, every aspect of that Memorandum of Understanding has been ignored or violated by the U.S. He said Trump used U.S. vessels, as a matter of fact, to try to escort ships through near the coast of Oman and yesterday. And so it is this passive aggressiveness. It's the fact that Israel would never stop attacking Lebanon, but actually accelerated the attacks on Lebanon. And then, of course, we had J.D. Vance out there as people were complaining, you're going to give them $300 billion? And you complained about what was given to them by Barack Obama. And of course, what Barack Obama did was he also violated congressional laws because it said you can't pay this to them in U.S. currency or something like that. So he puts actual physical notes of different countries into a plane and flies it to them. And we talked about that, and it should have been criticized. Nevertheless, that was arguably money that they had paid when we broke the relationship with Iran, when they threw out the puppet that we had put in. We overthrew their government, their elected government, in a coup, CIA coup, and we installed a king in place of their elected president. That king was doing arms deals with the United States, and of course there was a lot of money that they had not gotten. So technically, that was their money. But when you look at what J.D. Vance was telling everybody, and he just manufactured this out of thin air. He said, don't worry, all the money that they're going to get, that's going to have to be used to buy food from American farmers. So this works out for the farmers. We're always there for the farmers. Yeah, you aren't. I mean, you're cutting deals with Argentina, giving them $20 billion, and then subsidizing them selling soy to the Chinese as you shut down the American farms. And so that was just pure, I don't know, did you get it from ChatGPT? It sounded like something that was AI hallucination, but it's hard to tell the difference between AI hallucination and flat out political lies anymore, isn't it? I was just telling Karen this morning when I looked at this Freedom Fuel stuff, and we're going to talk about that next. It's I never had any trust in politicians, and she can certainly tell you that. But I've never seen this level of corruption. It just keeps getting worse. That was one of the things that really stood out about Bill Clinton. He was the kind of guy who would look you right in the face and smile and lie to you. Well, Trump does the same thing, only much worse. And he does it in a way to create chaos and war as well. And this is, we've never seen this kind of blatant, in-your-face lies and corruption and theft. They just do it right out in public. As he pointed out, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nobody cares. He said that about all of his graft and corruption. He said, I was kind of careful the first term, but then I figured out that nobody cared. And so he's been doing deals with everybody since then. Birdhouse Blue said the agreement became a mouthful reminder that trusting the USA's word is a major geopolitical mistake. I'm reminded of of what was the guy? Russell Means, who was involved in the American Indian movement, and he was going to run. Actually, he did run for the presidential nomination of the Libertarian Party against Ron Paul. Ron Paul got it back in, I think that was 1988. But he wrote a book, and it was called Where White Men Fear to Tread. And he said, at the beginning of it, he said, white man, the federal government has broken every treaty it had with the Indians. He said, your Constitution is the federal government's treaty with you. And they've broken every aspect of that as well. Absolutely right about that. Solo Cat 1980 says, Glitch McConnell's situation reminds me of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It reminds me of the movie Weekend with Bernie, actually. I believe she was dead for months before her, quote, official death. That's right. These people will not leave office. They hang on to power because that's the only thing that gives them any meaning in life. You know, you've heard Hillary Clinton talking about the politics of meaning. For her, what that meant was that the meaning of life is power. And without power, there really isn't any life. I mean, she went into a deep dive depression, evidently, after losing to Donald Trump. But she's still hanging on, just like all these other politicians. The only way you get them out of office is feet first. AP Rumble Seat and continual wars are beta tests for platforms and programs that will be used to control world population. And I believe that these wars, when you look at what is being pushed at NATO, Zelensky was there pushing even more stuff. We're going to take a look at that. And pushing membership into NATO. If that happens, we're in a World War III situation. And that's where they want us to go. These people who have betrayed their country, and Mark Rutte is Exhibit A. Look at what he did in the Netherlands. He tried to shut down all natural farming, and they wanted everybody to, he had alliances with Bill Gates to make lab food, and with his in-laws had connections into a food delivery system called Picnic. And so they tried to criminalize fertilizer and farming. And the people in the Netherlands organized and got him kicked out. So where'd he go? NATO. When you look at Keir Starmer, his idea is, his first term is up, and maybe if they pick somebody else, maybe they'll put me in because I betrayed my own country, the UK, for the globalist agenda as well, in a different way. And so with his two-tier society, two-tier Keir is what they call him, he is also betraying the UK. And he's trying to starve them of energy and of industry. Basically, the current leadership of the UK has effectively ended all manufacturing in Britain, where the Industrial Revolution took root and was the strongest at the very beginning. They've now ended all that in the name of green politics and that type of thing. So people can't afford to even heat their homes because of what they have done. And this is in a country that has massive oil reserves in the North Sea. They've shut everything down. He's betrayed his people, so he's got nothing left but to go to the globalist organization, NATO. And that's why when you look at this, if NATO continually is pushing to get Ukraine into the organization and pushing for more war with Russia, and they are, all these different countries are, that is their ace in the hole because they are all at war with their own people, using divide and conquer, using starvation tactics, and people realize that and come after them, they're in trouble. So the best thing that you can do, look at what happened in Iran. If you create a war and you create an external enemy, just like in Iran, no matter how bad you are, no matter how bad you are oppressing your own people, they will rally behind you for protection. The European leaders understand that. And that's why they want to have a war. And that's why they want to use these wars to destroy everything and rebuild a global government. The Brew 2029 says Trump's U.S. economic implosion agenda is right on track, which will lead to an excelled resurgence of his and Buddy Gates' depopulation quotas. Absolutely right. Well, if you want to leave comments, you can go to Rumble. And where else do we pick up comments from, Lance? On the live
just
show.
Rumble and Kick right now.
Okay, and you can find those links at davidknight.news. You can also find out how you can support the program there as well. Tony's not going to be on with us today. Tony is I guess, our primary sponsor for the show, but he can't be on today. He's got some personal issues. So we are going to be going through and taking a look at what is happening with war and with Trump's solution to the problems that he's created in terms of fuel. But before we do, I mentioned the fact that things have gotten so bad for not just Trump, but for Netanyahu. These wars are so unpopular with their own people. Jewish Americans favor Zohran Mamdani more than Netanyahu by a whopping 32 points. And I played when this socialist, anti-Zionist mayor of New York was running in New York. I played clips that was done by an Israeli news organization, and they talked to people on the street and said, "Who'd you vote for?" They were appalled to find all these New York City Jews who had voted for Mamdani. And they said, "Well, I just oppose what Netanyahu is doing so strongly. This is my protest vote." And when you look at the debate, I'll never forget that. It's the sort of thing that any politician ought to do. They went through and they said, so where's the first country that you're going to go to? And he says, well, I'm not going to be traveling. I'd be mayor of New York. I'm going to be here in New York. And so then they accused him of not liking Israel because of that.
It was interesting because they ask it, he's at the very end or one from the end. It's a large group of people, and they ask it first to one on the other side of the thing, and they go one by one across all the candidates, and they all say, Israel, Israel, Israel. And then it comes to him, and he says, well, I would stay in New York. I would focus on the issues of New Yorkers.
That's why
and then they stop before going to the next one and say, wait a minute. Just say that Israel, give your loyalty to Israel. Yeah. We just want you to affirm that you will do Israel's interests, not America's.
That's right. And then they all went back and did a second genuflex to Israel as well. But you're right, Lance. That was the key thing. I should have said that everybody else had pledged their loyalty to Israel and their desire to go there and kiss the wall. And so he didn't do that. And that made him very popular with a lot of people, even though he is going to pursue policies that are going to be very destructive, these socialist communist policies that he has. So he is far more popular amongst Jewish Americans than Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, according to a new survey. This is done by the Associated Press. According to the survey, 44% of Jewish adults view the Muslim mayor of New York City favorably. 39% view him negatively. So it's roughly, they don't have what the margin of error is here. But he has more support than Netanyahu. Netanyahu is viewed unfavorably by 59% of Jewish respondents in this poll. And support for Israel is also dropping. A third of Jewish Americans said that Israel is committing genocide. Half of Jewish respondents, 49%, denied that there was genocide, but a third said it was. A third believed that Israel's initial military response was justified, but only about 40% back Israel's current military operations. In other words, some of them said, well, it was justified for them to do something against the initial attack, but when you continue this on forever, that is unjust, and everybody can see that. Netanyahu said this week that he has doubts that Trump can successfully negotiate with Iran to end the nuclear program. Where's he going to pull out that dog and pony show thing he put up behind himself 30 years ago in the UN? Everybody's laughing about it. It was like the Acme bomb from a Warner Brothers cartoon. 38% of Jewish adults believe the U.S. is currently too supportive of Israel. That's interesting. 32% believe it's not supportive enough. Another 28% think the current support is just about right. And so overall, 31% of respondents said Israelis' actions in Gaza constituted genocide. Roughly 20% said they did not. But the bottom line is that they have a higher negative opinion of Netanyahu than they do of Mamdani, which I think is very interesting. And the fact is that Zionists are hated by most Jews in the United States. And when you look at what is happening, the Zionists will even attack Jews in Israel if they don't hold to the Zionist plan. They've been doing this to ultra-Orthodox Jews for quite some time because they don't support the idea of the Jewish state. Many of them say, well, if we think we got a promise from God that he's going to bring us back to Israel, but we think God will fulfill that promise. We're not going to say that people ought to do what Abraham did and say, well, I've got a promise from God, so let me make that happen because God's just taking too long. Or maybe he forgot. Who knows? But when you look at what they did, this is a family who had their house burned in Israel because the guy was speaking out against these revisionist Zionist policies. Radical violence, kill first, then take the land. So what they did was they set his house on fire. And then, of course, you can see how they also hate Christians in Israel, not just the people who oppose the Zionism, but they also hate Christians. Here's a woman who is trying to walk her dogs, and she gets attacked by a group of young Israelis there, which we have seen this type of thing over and over again, spitting on people, running up behind them because they're not Jewish, and because they're Christian. Was a nun that was sucker punched from behind by a guy simply because she was Christian. This is very typical. But American Jews, who are typically leftists, they're the ones who are pushing DEI, CRT, LGBT. They don't like the right-wing revisionist Zionists that are there. And the ones in Israel, it's like somebody put out the meme that the response when you talk about genocide in Israel, the response from American Jews is typically, there is no genocide. That's not happening. Whereas in Israel, they will brag about it and boast about it. That's the difference between the two different groups. Well, let's take a look at what's going on with the oil embargo. This is Trump's oil embargo, by the way, and is leading to some very strange things. We have the Mexican cartels, these heinous crime organizations that have been created by drug prohibition, just like Al Capone was created by alcohol prohibition. These cartels have been created and sustained by that, and that is still their main business, but they get into human trafficking, and they also get into selling black market oil to escape the taxes. It's the same kind of thing that you see everywhere. The taxes are really high, like, for instance, the taxes on cigarettes in New York City. You wind up with people, and this is the guy that got one of the guys that was selling what they call loosies, selling individual cigarettes so that people can buy them on the street without having to pay the taxes if they buy like an entire carton of them at a time in the store. And so whenever you get the taxes too high, you wind up creating a black market. And that's what's been happening. There's been a black market in oil. The cartels, though, are now reversing that black market, and they're smuggling oil out of Texas and into Mexico because the taxes have gotten so high in Mexico. But as you've got the cartels involved in a black market, you've got Trump involved in BS fascism with his freedom fuel stores that he's doing. We'll talk about that in just a second. But isn't it interesting that whether we're talking about a drug war or an Iran war, there's always these adverse effects, just like a big pharmaceutical war against us. There's always these adverse effects, things that pop up that maybe they didn't even plan. So fuel smuggling is now the second largest income source for the Mexican drug cartels, after only drugs. Mexico's drug cartels have long made money by smuggling illegally obtained oil into the U.S. They're also now smuggling fuel back into Mexico in a scheme to sell the product at full cost while ducking taxes. As much as 1/3 of all fuel sold in Mexico may be illicit. Yeah, they were stealing it from the Mexican oil companies there and selling it in Mexico, but now they're going in the opposite direction. This is the crazy way that they have distorted the marketplace here. So that brings us to Trump's distortion of the marketplace, his so-called freedom fuel gas stations. And remember, Trump said, I'd make a great communist. And this is very much like Mom Danny's New York City idea that, hey, food is just too expensive. So we're going to have New York City government under me. We're going to run grocery stores, and we'll make the food cheaper. Well, what's that going to do? It's going to put out the small businesses there, the bodegas that are selling groceries and so forth. It's going to go into competition with them. And that's exactly what Trump is looking to do. And it's going to really be the result of his program that he has. Do we have those clips in the board, Lance? I don't see those clips that I sent you.
Yes, they are on the board.
Okay. All right. Well, so the first Freedom Fuel Network gas station has landed, he says, in Philadelphia. And the White House put out a commercial, which when I saw it, I thought, what is this? Is this AI slop?
Save money. I had to go back in and get my change. I thought gas was more expensive, but it's not. So thanks, Trump, for saving me some money.
We're here at the first Freedom Fuel Network gas station right here in Philadelphia, leading the charge to lower gas prices, $3.47. That's for our 47th president, President Donald J. Trump. The price of gas here is 50 cents lower than the Pennsylvania average gas price.
4th of July, the gas prices are coming down, which is great.
I am very happy about the cheap gas prices.
Happy 4th of July.
Hopefully everyone has a great holiday. Super pumped the gas prices are lowered.
I'm just grateful. Right now, we're in a difficult time in this world, but it's nice to see some stability that we can enjoy.
Definitely appreciate the lower gas prices.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
When I saw it, I thought it was fake news, but I'm glad it's
When I saw this, I thought it was AI.
my eyes. When I just rolled past, I'm actually taking a trip down the shore, so I wasn't even going to come and get the gas, but I'm glad I did, because now it just saved me a lot of money. Thanks a lot, Trump. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a good job.
Hey, bro, you're doing a great job.
It's President Donald J. Trump leading the charge to lower gas prices right here at Freedom Fuel Network's gas stations.
Isn't that amazing? The guy that created a global oil crisis and shot the price of oil way up is now boasting about how he is lowering it. That's like closing the Strait of Hormuz and then bragging about getting it open again, which they didn't do. And so they're selling it for $3.47, whereas the average price in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, where they have high taxes, is $3.98 and $3.86, higher in Pennsylvania than it is even in New Jersey. The national average price of fuel is $3.79 per gallon. Wasn't that great? Trump is getting us cheaper gas. What an idiotic, asinine take on all of this. What was the average national price before he started his war, or Israel's war? The average price before the war started was $2.98. Now the average price is $3.79. He's getting the price of gas down. Yeah, just only MAGA could believe that. You have to be that clueless in order to believe that. But I looked at this and I thought, so what is this? You know, my first thought of it was, this is not even real. And then I checked it and it's like, no, he does have a network of some of these stations that are doing it. And so I looked for the Freedom Fuel Network. And there actually was a website, freedomfuelnetwork.lol. Somebody took out this website. Take a look at this. Freedom Fuel Network, how it started. And they talk about Donald Trump and then they say, and yet it doesn't exist at all, because he talked about this on June the 30th. And so on June 30th, there were no gas stations. And that's what they point out there. They said there are 0 gas stations in the Freedom Fuel Network. I thought, is that right? Did the Hill actually get this wrong? Because the Hill reported some of those quotes from that video. I looked at that and my first response was, well, they just fell for some AI slop from the White House, which they do all the time. But no, actually, they also had a link in the story to a different website, which is the real website from the White House. That website looks like this. It's got 25 stores there, and you can click on them. They're numbered 1 through 25. 25 stores in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I don't know how many tens of thousands of locations there are in the United States that sell gasoline, but here's 25 of them. And so I looked at one of these. I went to number 1, and I went to Google Maps to see what this place looked like. Here's what it looks like. It's actually a gas and go convenience store. But you saw the video there where they had gone through and they had done some new livery and branding and signs for the Trump administration saying freedom fuel and all the rest of the stuff, covering up the gas and go stuff, or covering up, some of them are Sunoco stations. They basically just went into a few franchises and a few convenience stores, and because this network did not exist, he didn't create any new stores. What he did was he created deals with some of the existing stores over the last, I don't know, was it 10 days or so, and put this stuff up overnight. All he did was put a wrapping on it, put his name on it effectively. That's what Trump does. Here's Freedom Store number 2. Oh, look at that. It's another gas and go. I didn't go through all 25 of them, but you're going to see something like that, or you're going to see a Sunoco station. But look at this. We'll go back to number 1 again. Look what the price is there. $2.99. And he's bragging about the fact that it's going to be $3.49. When was that picture taken? Well, that picture was taken May of 2025. Gas was $2.99. Now, even at Trump's Freedom Store, it's $3.49. But that's a victory according to the White House and according to MAGA. Yeah, we should cheer that. But just stay tuned, because with Trump, it's not usually just a lie. There's also some kind of a scam to make him money personally. That's the kind of fascism that's behind this. But again, he announced that on June 30th. He knew that we were going to buckle up for a longer gas war as part of this Zionist quagmire that he's gotten us into. On Tuesday, American forces struck more than 80 Iranian targets in response to Islamic Republic attacking 3 commercial ships. And they were boasting about the fact these are punitive strikes. They're not strategic. They're punitive. You don't win wars with punitive strikes. What you do is you galvanize the opposition. And so as the escalation continued, Trump said that the memorandum of understanding is over. It didn't even last a month after they signed this agreement. They never abided by any of it. They publicly denounced all of it. That's where we are with these people. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we will be right back. Stay with us.
Using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
Well, welcome back. As I said before, it's never only just a lie from Trump. There's usually some kind of a scam, con business deal that's there as well. And as you look at his history here, Forbes had an article, Trump's foreign licensing business grew 900% after he returned to power. He limited his international dealings during his first term, but remember, he said, hey, I found out nobody cares, so I'm going to cash in. The developer-in-chief is back in business, and he's showing just how lucrative an unrestrained presidency can be. And because nobody cares. The president's international licensing business looked nearly dead, I should say, a few years ago. It generated, however, $61 million in 2025, up an estimated 30% from 2024 and 900% from 2023. No country provided more last year than the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. Trump collected $23 million through deals with two developers, and he generated $10 million in India, $9 million in Saudi Arabia. He also had deals in Qatar, Romania, Vietnam that delivered $5 million apiece. Yeah, you go in with these, it's the same game that Biden was running with Hunter. You want to do something with the American government, get some contracts. Well, here's our guy, the big guy that's there. And there was an interesting article from The Atlantic, what Trump has in common with the far left. He likes Mom Danny. He likes Mom Danny's policies. They said if the president fears communism, maybe he should stop mimicking its worst elements. As they point out, they said communism, of course, they got this wrong because this is The Atlantic. They said communism is a system of government in which the ruling party controls major investment decisions while hoarding wealth for itself and suppressing all opposition. No, that is fascism. That is fascism, where you control the major investment decisions, you hoard the wealth for yourself, you suppress all opposition, and you feather your nest. Communism is where the government owns it, not controls it. So they gave you the definition for fascism, which is what Trump is doing. It's economic fascism. The left is right. He is a fascist, economically speaking, especially. On closer inspection, yes.
I mean, with the Trump gas stations, now we actually are communists.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, he doesn't actually own those. There's some kind of a deal that's been struck with these people. And what he's going to do, and I don't like this as somebody who's been in business, and it's too bad we didn't have Tony Arterburn on today because his family was in the convenience store gas station business for quite some time. His father was. And he knows just how difficult that is and what small profit margins they have to exist on. So you've got somebody coming in like Donald Trump, and for political virtue signaling, he's going to cut the prices by 50 cents over a $4 price. So that's about a 12% cut. People are going to run down the road for a 50 cent cheaper gasoline. Absolutely will. And it's going to hurt the small gasoline businesses that are there. He doesn't care about that. It's simply about him. It's about making himself look good. And it's nothing other than virtue signaling. There may be some subsidy coming from the U.S. government. Who knows what the deal is going to be with this? Nobody has been able to pull that back. This is relatively new. And it may surface, I'm just guessing, that these companies are not going to be selling this gasoline at a loss just to make Donald Trump look good. Donald Trump may be kicking them back the money that they have dropped the price on. And so on closer inspection, says The Atlantic, Trump has more in common with communists than his hostile rhetoric lets on. He's probably done more to expand public ownership as the means of production than any president in history. And he has done that as well. Buying stock in these companies, stakes in these various companies like Intel, NVIDIA, and others. And that is communism. If you control it, that is fascism. And always the fascists and the communists make sure that they and their families get wealthy off of this. Trump has seized a stake in nearly 24 private firms so far, for little reason other than the fact that he can. So gasoline retailers, he said, must lower prices, or there's going to be big problems lying ahead. In other words, you sell your gasoline at a lower price and eat it because I did things that drove the price of gas up globally. You cut your price and cut your profits, maybe even go out of business, or I will open up a deal I'll make a deal with some of these companies, and I will subsidize this and drive you out of business. That's the way this works. He's a mafia figure as well. That's a real nice little convenience store you got there. It'd be a shame if it goes out of business. He has no power to do so. The distinction between public and private has eroded, however, during his presidency to the degree that oil companies or any large companies have reason to believe that defying Trump's wishes could expose them to governmental retaliation. That's exactly right. Or it could expose them to crony price fixing and anti-competitive partnerships with people. That's what I think is really going on with all this so-called freedom stuff. Trump's admiration for communist political methods is even more pronounced than his respect for its economic system. And we talk about freedom fuel. We had freedom before we had this fool in government. And we won't have freedom until we are free of this fool who is in the White House. He is destroying us economically. Again, just different tactics than he did his first time around when he locked everybody down, drove so many small mom and pop individual stores out of business, small farms out of business with his tariffs. He's doing the same kind of stuff again this time. In 1990, Trump told Playboy that the Chinese Communist Party, quote, almost blew it before they showed, quote, the power of strength, unquote, by crushing demonstrations in Tiananmen Square. When we look at Western leaders, who is the guy that likes what China did in Tiananmen Square and says it out loud? Donald Trump. Of course, we've had a lot of people, both left and right, want to be communist dictators. We've heard that from Justin Trudeau. We heard it from George W. Bush. George W. Bush said, I wish I was like those Chinese communist dictators. I just tell people to do whatever they want, and they would have to do it. Justin Trudeau said the same thing, and so did Trump. He has praised communist dictators. He said about Cuba, he said they crushed all opposition. And he also said that about China's leader Xi. He said he's a brilliant guy. In 2024, he said he controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. See, this is Trump's model for government. He doesn't go to somebody like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson. No, he appeals to somebody like Xi Jinping. He likes what the Chinese communists did in Tiananmen Square, and he likes the fact that Xi Jinping rules with an iron fist 1.4 billion people. He went on to say, Trump said, he's a brilliant guy, whether you like it or not. No, it's not brilliance. Tyranny is not brilliance. He claimed that Kim Jong-un and he fell in love, quote unquote, explaining he's the head of a country, and he's the strong head. Don't let anyone think anything different. He speaks, and his people sit up at attention. I want my people to do the same. Remember, when his father died, you either put on this phony display of crying, or you got taken away into a prison for questioning and torture. These are the kinds of people that he respects, that he thinks are brilliant, that he thinks are smart, that he aspires to. Very different than Thomas Jefferson, who said, I've sworn eternal opposition to every tyranny over the mind of man. Trump has aspired to that. He doesn't have any enmity to that. Trump's most powerful aide, Stephen Miller, has echoed this line of thinking. Stephen Miller said, and remember this when he said, it was just a couple of months ago, actually it was in January, he said, we live in the real world, and it is governed by strength, governed by force, governed by power. These are the iron laws of the world that have existed since the beginning of time. And what was the context for that? Well, he was talking about why we should have Greenland. If the greenish people, if the Greenland people can't hold it, if they don't have the power to hold that, we have the power to take it from them. And that is a reprehensible view, folks. That is absolutely un-American. And you know how that's going to affect us as Americans. Because if that's their mindset, there's nothing to stop them from taking things from you. They're going to take things from people in Greenland. And of course, Netanyahu loves Genghis Khan, and he despises the Lord Jesus Christ. This is where these people are coming from. Enthusiasts for capitalism see prosperity as a positive-sum enterprise. In other words, it's a win-win situation. Trump, however, sees it as a zero-sum situation. It's a win-lose situation. I win by making you lose. The strong sees from the weak, and that informs his constant desire to steal natural resources from smaller countries, like Greenland, for example. But that is his point of view. The guy is nothing other than a mafia thug who can't even operate a casino at a profit. And he's going to bankrupt us. He's going to get us drawn into one war after the other. He's got a long list of countries that he wants to have war with. You know, we got to go to war with Cuba next. Then maybe Greenland. Who knows what we're going to do with that? None of this is to suggest that Trump is devoted to communism or to any theory at all. Trump is sub-ideological. The instincts that guide his decisions are generally right-wing rather than left-wing. No, I would say what guides his decision is west-wing. He wants power in the presidency, and he wants himself in the presidency. He wants a dictatorship. How many times does he have to tell us? No, I'm just joking about that. Yeah, right. I'm just joking about being a king. I'm just joking about being a dictator. And yet he does it. And then he jokes about it again. He does AI memes about it again. And so, yeah, he's not left-wing. He's not right-wing. He doesn't have any philosophy. He doesn't have any principles. He's about one thing and one thing only, himself. Trump's denunciations of communism have an undercurrent of admiration. He says things like, well, communism's very easy to sell. It destroys everything, but it's very easy to sell. He said this just a couple of weeks ago. He said, I'll be honest, I think I'd be the greatest communist in history. I'd give free rent. Ladies and gentlemen, from now on, you don't have to pay any rent. From now on, anybody who wants a house, just pick the house you want. Everybody gets free food. Everything is free from this point forward. Everybody's going to vote for me. And if I create these, let me give you discounted gas. How about that? I'll discount it so that it's only 50 cents a gallon more than the average national price was when I did this. And we'll consider that to be a win. I'm going to start with cheaper gas through government subsidies. That's the idiotic economics behind it. He doesn't do economics either, just like he doesn't do political theory. As I said before, his economics is egonomics, and his geopolitics is ego politics. It's all just about him and how he makes himself and his family more powerful. Trump claimed days before taking office in 2017 that he had turned down $2 billion to do a series of deals, explaining, I don't want to take advantage of something, until he did take advantage of something. In 2021, one day before he announced his third presidential campaign, he finalized a new deal with one of Sajwani's old deputies. This is the deal, the guy that he turned down the deal with before. Trump finalized a new deal then, and the Saudi organization then put Trump's name on a hotel and golf project in Oman. As Trump crept closer to the White House, more deals appeared, extending the Trump empire into Saudi Arabia and into Qatar. In India, he has friends both old and new. Among the fresh faces is a guy named Ambani, not Mom Danny, but Ambani, an industrialist worth an estimated $90 billion. He paid one of Trump's companies $10 million in 2024. A second company, he paid $1.5 million in 2025. In February, the Trump administration granted Ambani's business a license to buy Venezuelan oil. Then the next month, he touted an investment that Ambani's firm made to support a Texas refinery development in which his son, Donald Trump Jr., reportedly holds a stake. You see how this works? And as I played that clip for you yesterday, it's a visual clip, but he said, I've got two stacks here. I had two little pyramids. One of them, he couldn't even make a pyramid with it because it was 4 cups. He said, this is the amount of increase of net worth of all the presidents combined for the last 100 years. And then he had a giant stack that was about 15 feet tall, a pyramid of cups that he'd stacked up. And he goes, if each of these cups is the same amount of money, that little cup over there 3 or 4 cups over there. That's what all of the presidents combined made in the last century until Donald Trump. And then this mountain behind me, this pyramid mountain behind me of cups, that's what Donald Trump made in the first year of his second term. The kind of graft and corruption that we've seen, both in the nature of it, the fascist as well as the communist aspects of it, the government owning or the government controlling private companies, the absolute repudiation of the free market. That's one aspect of it. That's bad enough. But the personal dealing and the personal enrichment that Trump and his family are doing is just beyond imagination. Again, as I said, as low as my opinion is of the federal government and politicians, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Don Jr. and his brother Eric now run the Trump Organization on a day-to-day basis. They spent years flying around the world pursuing deals while receiving little or no equity in them. But things changed recently, and now they're doing lots of deals, and they're making lots of money. And this isn't even where he makes his biggest money. His biggest money is in the crypto scams that he's been running. Well, things didn't go too well for him in court this last week. Trump lost an appeal in court to delay paying E. Jean Carroll the $5 million in damages that she won in a civil suit. A New York federal appeals court on Wednesday night, last night, rejected a request by Trump to block the collection of the $5 million plus interest for damages from a jury verdict that held him civilly liable for sexually abusing and defaming her. Hours after the Manhattan Federal District Court Judge Lewis Kaplan granted Carroll's request to receive nearly $5.8 million from funds that Trump deposited with the court 3 years ago. And in the earlier ruling, Kaplan ordered the releasing of the money to Carroll, pointing to the language of an agreement between her and Trump that called for her to be given the damage award if the Supreme Court denied his request that it hear his appeal. So the money was put up in, I guess, a deposit form of some sort, and pending appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court. However, the Supreme Court rejected Trump's request on June 29th. And so the judge then said, okay, well, that means that she gets the money, and said in the highly unlikely event the Supreme Court were to, 1, grant the defendant's petition for rehearing, 2, reverse itself and grant his previously denied cert petition, and 3, reverse the judgment in this case, the defendant could bring suit to recover any funds erroneously dispersed. In other words, if you win in these 3 areas, and probably not going to win in any of them, the Supreme Court's not going to reverse itself. But if you, by some strange realigning of the planets, manage to get all 3 of those, then you could sue and you could get your money back that was erroneously dispersed. But of course, Trump never takes no for an answer. And he never takes the law as an answer either. He doesn't take any court decisions as an answer. He is now demanding that the Supreme Court do something that it has only done once, ever. And he went on a blistering tirade against the Supreme Court over an issue which basically I agree with him on this issue. I disagree with him on most things, but on this particular issue, he's right and the Supreme Court is wrong. But he's wrong if he thinks that the Supreme Court is going to reverse its decision. They are not as easily intimidated as the CEO of FIFA, the football, FIFA, I guess is the way they say it. He showed himself to be afraid of Trump and a sycophant from the very beginning when he gave the FIFA organization, created a trophy. They went down to the store, had a trophy made up, and presented him with a football peace prize. And then Trump went to war with football, right? That's what he does. He's brought more conflict to FIFA than they've had for quite a while. Yeah, go ahead.
Should have gotten him a bigger trophy.
But it showed that he was weak. It showed that he was a sycophant. And so Trump exploited that. Trump has now demanded the Supreme Court reverse its own birthright citizenship ruling, something the justices have done exactly once in their 236-year history. Citizenship then and now was the right to have rights, said John Roberts. And I've talked about how absurd that statement is. And again, he's saying that oxymoron. You don't have a right to have rights. You have rights, say the Declaration of Independence, because we are endowed by our Creator with these inalienable rights. We are created in the image of God, and that's why we have human rights. But he's talking about things like the right to welfare, which is not a right. It's a government privilege. And he's, when we look at citizenship, we're talking about things like the ability to be able to vote, not necessarily to be able to participate in the welfare state. But that's what John Roberts is looking at. And of course, he was somebody who was appointed by a Republican as well. That's why I think it is really hopeless to put your hope in the Supreme Court. So Trump ranted last night. He said signs and billboards being put up all over the southern border in Mexico. They're advertising birthright citizenship with deliveries starting at $4,000. He said American citizenship is not for sale. That is, I guess he forgot about his gold card. You can get what is equivalent to a green card. It's your path to citizenship. It costs $1 million to do that. And you may or may not get citizenship. Most likely you will, right? It's the gold card instead of the green card that you get. And you pay $1 million for that. But you could also go to Mexico and you could pay them $4,000. And then you're guaranteed to have citizenship if the baby drops on American soil. I think that's nonsense. And I think Clarence Thomas is the one who got it right. But when he attacks the Supreme Court, understand that a third of the Supreme Court was put in by Donald Trump. As I've said many times, they pick these justices and nobody knows how they're going to go. And usually they go native, right? They go statist. And we have certainly seen that with Amy Coney Barrett. But anyway, he put a third of the chocolates in the box. And he just doesn't know what he's going to get. That's what my mom always said. Like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get. He says, I'll be asking for a rehearing by the U.S. Supreme Court immediately. This miscarriage of justice will destroy America if they don't change their absolutely insane decision. Well, he's right about that, but he's wrong to think that the Supreme Court is going to reverse this. Absolutely is not. Clarence Thomas wrote a great opposition to all this, but even he did not call for a rehearing. Ain't going to happen. Well, we're going to take a quick break, folks, and we will be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Welcome back, folks. I got a comment here from Tactical Boy 88. He says, Flock, the Flex LPR, specifically designed for installation on patrol vehicles, allows officers to capture license plate data while driving or from a command post. And we just had a report that was on Free Thought Project about that very thing. It was a guy who was working, he's a cop, and when he's off duty, he's working as a security guard. And he was one of the entertainers that he was guarding. He developed an attraction to it. So he started stalking her using the flock cameras that he had in his car. And at the point where he pulled her over, he nearly had a head-on collision to try to keep up with her. As he got into, passed several cars in a no-passing lane and nearly had a head-on collision with an 18-wheeler so he could pull her over to meet her, right, and have a discussion with her. These are the types of abuses that are going to happen when people have this kind of power. And that's why we don't trust individuals. We have to have control to make sure they don't have the power to be able to abuse that. As you had Patrick Henry say, don't talk to me about trust in man. Let's bind them down with the chains of the Constitution and the rule of law. That's exactly what needs to be done.
It's also, you hear the constant refrain with these types of things that, oh, well, we don't have to worry about the Constitution and your right to privacy because this is a private company. At the same time, they're paying the private company to do what they want or getting these kinds of deals where they're putting the cameras on the police cars.
That's right. That's right. As a matter of fact, there was this meme that's been put out. I've seen this a couple of times. And it is an AI version of Mel Gibson as Braveheart. He's hiding behind a tree and he's got a saw in his hand, and you see a couple of these cameras with their solar panels on top of them. And you see a couple of those by the road. He's going to go out there and cut those down. That's the point at where we are right now, folks. People are getting fed up with this kind of stuff. Well,
I heard a few were destroyed for the 4th of July.
Really? That would be a way to celebrate your independence, wouldn't it? That would be, I think, appropriate. But hey, just understand the risks that are there. That got to be quite a thing in the UK. They started putting up bollards to create these no-go zones where cars couldn't go as part of their 15-minute city stuff. So they're going to limit people's travel by actually putting up physical barricades and things like that. But it's also the surveillance to enforce that. So they've had quite a few people put on masks and other things to cut these things down. The important thing is, if you do that, don't take it back and store it in your house. That got some people in a lot of trouble, because then they came after them not for some kind of destruction of property, but saying, well, you kept this stuff because you wanted the solar panels or this or that, and they came after them for larceny, and which has a higher penalty involved in it. But it always reminds me of the beginning of Cool Hand Luke. It starts with Paul Newman is drunk, and he's chopping down parking meters, cutting the heads off of them, and he's kind of staggering around as he's cutting these things off and cutting them with the pipe. And next thing you know, he's before the judge, and he gets sent to this really tough prison, like out in the bayou of Louisiana or something like that. And you got the guy, what was his name? Struthers, I think it was. Can't remember the actor. He's always says, what we have here is failure to communicate. He starts out the movie by saying, well, what brought you here? He says, well, boss, I was cutting the head off of parking meters. He goes, I don't know what you think that's going to get you, but it got you several years here. And that's basically the type of thing that's going to happen. You want to cut the head off a parking meter. You want to cut the head off of a surveillance camera. That's you may wind up with a Cool Hand Luke approach.
Of course, where you think that's going to get you is a more free country in this case.
At least temporarily, right? But yeah, it's not going to work unless the people demand that these things be taken out from a systemic thing. I mean, that's like, cutting the head off of these parking meters or cutting the heads off of these surveillance cameras is not going to be any more effective than assassinating a bad leader, because they'll just put another bad leader in unless you get to the fundamental principles of it and people demand that things change at a fundamental level. That's why I say these pushbacks against the data centers, yes, they are horrific in terms of driving the cost of electricity up, in terms of the pollution and the water usage and all the rest of this stuff. Nevertheless, you've got to attack this from the standpoint of principle and the fact that we do not want to have a surveillance state. We do not want to have the government that sees everything that we do, controls everything we do, and punishes everything that we do. That has to be the basis. Any of these other things is like, oh, okay, well, we'll do something to make it look like electricity is cheaper or whatever. I mean, isn't it interesting? We talked about the MacGuffin, and again, we were talking about Zelensky earlier and how he is pushing for World War III. But when we look at the MacGuffin, and what we've always talked about is the fact that it doesn't really matter what they get you excited about, right? It could be about climate change. They start out with global warming, then they turn to global cooling, and then they turn to climate change, and then you have the lockdowns. And guess what? Whether you're talking about global warming, global cooling, or just climate change, or whether you're talking about a pandemic, what is the remedy for all of it? It's to restrict your movement. is to create a permission society. You got to have a vaccine passport. You got to have an ID to get on the internet or whatever. It's always about that type of thing. And so when you look at this, understand that the I hit the wrong thing here. I was trying to find the T-shirt commercial for Zelensky, but the MacGuffin T-shirt that's there. But
I can play that.
Yeah, go ahead and play that.
Hello, it's me, Volodymyr Zelensky. I'm so tired of wearing these same T-shirts everywhere for years. You'd think with all the billions I've skimmed off America, I could dress better. And I could, if only David Knight would send me one of his beautiful gray MacGuffin hoodies or a new black T-shirt with the MacGuffin logo in blue. But he told me to get lost. Maybe one of you American suckers can buy me some at thedavidknightshow.com. You should be able to buy me several hundred. Those amazing sand-colored microphone hoodies are so beautiful. I'd wear something other than green military cosplay to my various galas and social events. If you want to save on shipping, just put it in the next package of bombs and missiles coming from the USA.
Yeah, we won't sell him a T-shirt, but Trump will sell out the country to him and to NATO and to Israel. Meanwhile, you have Weekend with McConnell. As I said yesterday, they're not fooling anybody. Handy told us, and again, you can find him on Substack at iHandy. He's worked EMS for decades. And he said, we usually get these calls in the morning because that's when other people in the household wake up and find the person unconscious in bed. And he goes, when it is cardiac arrest and they're unconscious and who knows how long that's been going on, he goes, that's always a really bad sign. It's bad enough to try to be able to save somebody when there are witnesses around and you go into cardiac arrest. But if it happens to you while everybody's asleep, he said, typically that's going to be a really bad outcome. If they can keep the person alive, they'll be brain dead. And he said he may be keeping him alive on a ventilator. Now, that was last Friday Friday afternoon that Handy sent that to me. And he's absolutely right. So there's been a lot of discussion about this. And a lot of people have, even on the MAGA side, have talked about it. Laura Loomer, and there's another person who got the radio communications about the EMS. And the two of them are saying the same thing that Handy said, because we know that's the case. And yet, yesterday we had people who were saying, had a lot of Republicans who were saying, yeah, we talked to him. Did you really? And I said, there's nothing about that makes any sense, except for the fact that they don't want the Democrat governor of Kentucky to appoint a replacement or to have a special election. If they can drag this out to the first week of August, then they can stop there being a special election to replace Mitch McConnell. And that's exactly what the Republicans are trying to do. And it is an interesting thing to see how the Republicans will lie, cheat, and steal, just like the Democrats, isn't it? I mean, it's amazing. And they know that everybody knows that they're lying to us, but they still do it. And so you had the Kentucky governor heard these statements from people, and he sent a letter to Mitch McConnell's office. And basically, he wants the senator himself to provide an update on his current health status. He said, I'm requesting the senator provide an update on his current health status. If he's talking to all these Republicans, why wouldn't he just pick up the phone and call the governor of Kentucky? He's basically calling their bluff, calling their lies. And found unconscious and non-responsive after cardiac arrest. McConnell is the longest-serving Senate leader in history, and they're trying to stretch this out, perhaps, I guess. He had already announced he was not going to seek re-election, and a congressperson, Andy Barr, won the Republican primary to contest for his open seat, making him the likely successor. But what we're looking at here is the same type of thing that Dianne Feinstein did. She was in unbelievably bad health, just like Mitch McConnell, and would not step down. She's going to grasp that lever of power until they pry it out of their cold, dead hands. That's the absolute truth of the matter. And so You have all these people like Scott Jennings. I was saying Scott Jennings wrote about his conversation with Mitch McConnell as if nothing was amiss. He said, I spoke to my old friend Mitch McConnell this morning. He's still recovering in the hospital. We talked for just shy of 20 minutes about Iran, Ukraine, the unfolding situation in Maine, my visit to the TR Presidential Library, and even a little bit of Senate history. I told him we want to see him back at work as soon as possible. Well, that's a lot of topics to cover in 20 minutes if you're going to cover it in any depth at all, right? And yet we know that Scott Jennings, and we've caught him in this before, he is a bold-faced liar who has zero credibility. It's just amazing that people don't care about their credibility when they're someone who is on air. I mean, why would you? That's exactly what I told Alex Jones when they were running this scam thing for Stop the Steal, and they talked about the sting. I said, Alex, you don't have anything except your credibility if you're a commentator. Why would you lie to people with something that is so obviously untrue? Well, Scott Jennings is doing the same thing, and so is Majority Whip John Barrasso of Wyoming. He also reported a call of roughly 20 minutes. Isn't that funny? GOP Representative Jack Kimball, though, said, hey, we talked for 45 minutes. Kimball said he's so sharp. Just like always, he let me do all the talking. This is really like Weekend with Bernie, isn't it? And again, Massey trolled with this. Reportedly, we saw the PJ Rumble said that Massey was saying, yeah, we talked. And he said, we need to end the war in Iran and we need to do all these other things. But yeah, they're just, it's amazing to see this happening. Once the governor issues a proclamation, copy has to be sent to the sheriffs of each county. Isn't that interesting? The sheriffs are very powerful by design. They wanted to make sure that it was at the local level that you had an elected official, not a police chief, but an elected official who had at least some accountability to the people, that they would be really where the rubber meets the road, local law enforcement. That's why it's so important for us to have constitutional sheriffs. Anyway, they would send a notification to the sheriffs of a special election 63 days before the election. The deadline of 56 days before the election. So in Kentucky, a special election to replace a senator will not be called if it is closer than 3 months before the next election. So that means that if the Republicans can draw the clock out to August the 3rd, then we'll see what happens with that. They'll be able to do that. It's the same type of stuff that you saw Mike Johnson do in terms of trying to avoid releasing the Epstein documents. Remember? They take the entire month of August off, and he extended that and got them off a couple of weeks early because he was worried that Massey and other people were going to put through the legislation that was going to force this to happen. And Trump was fighting against it, and Mike Johnson was fighting against it. And then during the recess, while they were all taking a long extended vacation, there was a special election for a Democrat congressman who had died. His daughter won. But both the Democrat and the Republican in that election were calling for the release of the Epstein documents, but the Democrat won. And so then Mike Johnson made a laughing stock of himself and burned any remaining credibility that he had by refusing to accept her as swear her in as a congressperson so that they could not get closure on this and have a vote. So he drug that out for the longest amount of time. And Trump and Lance says he's got Massey's tweet. Let's see that tweet there. Yeah, I spoke to Mitch McConnell for 20 minutes this morning, and he said we should end the war with Iran, stop giving aid to Israel, and stop spying on Americans without a warrant. And he's really sorry about how my primary turned out. Well, this article here says, this is actually not an article, but it is a comment by one person on X who said, if a special election were called, Trump's critic, Thomas Massey, would certainly run and likely win, which would be a huge headache for Trump and his agenda. If he didn't win, he would split the vote, allowing a Democrat to fill the seat. So it's kind of an interesting, this is why the Republicans are going to embarrass and I wouldn't say shame themselves because they have no shame. This is why they're going to shamelessly lie to people about Mitch McConnell being alive. They only have to extend this out, for another 3 weeks, let's say, and then they're home free. Jason Barker, Knights of the Storm. Good to see you, Jason. He said, PSA, public service announcement. Tony's not here today, but his show will run after this one. Ashley and I are filling in today. Well, that's great. That's great. So you can catch the Tony Arterburn broadcast on Twitter as well as on Rumble right after this show. He went on to say as well, if they tokenize all the unrealized resources and apply it to our debt, then China will own most of the country. And as a matter of fact, that's what they were talking about doing at the very beginning. If you remember, you had Lutnick, Bessent, and Burgum. Burgum being the head of the Interior Department, as well as Bessent at Treasury and Lutnick at Commerce. And that unholy trinity was saying, hey, we got so many resources. We got hundreds of trillions of dollars or whatever in resources. We can just sell off America and we can pay off the debt that way. And I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to tokenize it and sell it off. I remember another awful movie from the 1970s, Americathon. And that was when people started paying attention to the debt because of high inflation and things that were happening. And they posited an America in the future where they would have to have a telethon to keep America going. So now we can have an auction on Wall Street with tokenized assets. Yeah, we're going to be somewhere between Americathon and Idiocracy. And then what will come after all of that is going to be a combination of 1984 and Orwell's Big Brother. Yeah. Well, I should say Brave New World. That's the combination. Joe Scarborough said, it seems like every Republican on Capitol Hill or any right-wing person on TV seems to have talked to Mitch McConnell for 20 minutes. They may have talked to him, but they didn't speak with him, I think, is the issue. Well, we have Florida cities, and this is the power that we have that we're not using here. In Florida, they don't have an income tax. So they've had some pretty high sales tax and property tax things and stuff like that. But already there's a property tax revolt in Florida. And even though it hasn't come up for a vote, you've already got massive changes taking place in various counties. For example, administrator in Leon County has frozen hiring. He has cut travel and other expenses and begun a year-long analysis for commissioners on how to best restructure the county's finances and organizations. They're not going to do that unless you cut the taxes and you cut their income. Of course, the problem with the federal government is it just prints more money. But that works when you're talking about state government or local government. They can't print money like that. And actually, the federal government shouldn't be allowed to print money like that. But the measure is not even law yet, and yet people are already starting to see the benefits of cutting the property tax. And again, property tax is one of the most heinous of taxes out there. It is something that you never get rid of. You're constantly renting your home from the government, and we have seen some jurisdictions where they really weaponize this in a most evil way. You have people who are elderly who paid off their mortgage a long time ago, and maybe now they're in the late 80s or early 90s, and they miss a tax payment. And they come in and for just a couple of $1,000s, they take this person's home, which might be worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and sell it on the market and make a huge profit for that. And so we've had case after case of people fighting that in court. Here is a story that I think is really heinous, and it goes back to what we talk about, sudden infant death syndrome. A study of 208 infant deaths highlights the unsafe sleep, but it doesn't have any information at all about vaccination status. Now, this is Children's Health Defense talking about this. And remember, Children's Health Defense was started by RFK Jr. Why is RFK Jr. not doing something about this? Cook County, Illinois recorded 208 sudden unexpected infant deaths from 2019 to 2023. A new analysis of the deaths focused heavily on sleep environments, concluding that unsafe sleeping was largely to blame. But what other conditions might account for the alarming rate? And what data did the researchers ignore or specifically exclude? Well, that would be their vaccination record. I played over and over again. You remember when they started having people die suddenly right after the Trump shot? And there was that lady, it's a very sad video. I've played it many times. And they started talking about sudden adult death syndrome. And she said, they're talking about this. And I just realized that my child, when they were just a few months old, right after the vaccination, the child died. And she said, I started thinking about this. And she broke down in tears and she said, I realized that I killed my child with those vaccinations. And I have said, no, actually, she did not kill her child. It was the medical establishment that did. They deceived her, and they're still deceiving people. The percentages of sleep-related infant deaths that occurred among infants with a history of preterm birth was 27%. Somebody who was in a neonatal intensive care unit was 32%. If they had exposure to tobacco smoke, 18%. If the parents' experience of intimate partner violence is 15%, or parental substance abuse, it was 29%. So they'll always try to pull in every other kind of factor, but notice that they look at, were they a preemie? Did they have to stay in a neonatal intensive care unit? Did the parents smoke tobacco, use drugs, or is there violence in the home? They'll look at anything other than the vaccines. And of course, this is where this all began. They didn't have a category for sudden infant death syndrome until the late 1960s, as they were starting to ramp up the vaccines. And we've had so many cases, I've covered some of them, where they blame the parents for the infant's death. Oh, you put them in the wrong sleeping position. Or the other one that they did quite a bit of, and that was the shaking syndrome. You shook the kid to death. And as many people pointed out, look, a child has such weak neck muscles that if you shook them enough to kill them, you'd break their neck. And that's not what they're finding with these shaking deaths that are out there. VAERS identified 2,989 reports of infant deaths that occurred within 60 days of vaccination from 1990 to 2019. So they don't want to look at that connection. They'll look at anything but that. And then we get this tragedy. This is a family who is now being a mother of twins that died 8 days after vaccination, is now being charged with murder in Idaho. The police arrested Andrea Shaw more than a year after her two children were found dead at their home, 8 days after getting their 18th month vaccines, plural, several of them. She said the doctors ignored her when she warned them that their father had previously experienced a bad reaction to a flu vaccine. So you have a history in the family of people who have bad reactions to these vaccines, but they just ignore that. They give the vaccines anyway to the children, and then the children die, and they come after the parent. There was didn't involve the death of the children, but there was a heinous example of that here in Tennessee, and had a situation where there was a family. They moved to Tennessee specifically because the homeschooling laws were better than they were in the state that they had been in. And then the mother got tired of the homeschooling and the Christian family thing and wanted a divorce. So they're in divorce court, and her lawyer knew that this judge was a fanatic about getting kids vaccinated. So he mentioned that to the judge, and the judge says, well, I consider that to be child abuse if you don't vaccinate your kids to the schedule. And so he said, whichever one of you will agree to vaccinate the kids, I will give custody to. And she said, I'll do it. So I gave custody of the kids and took them down and had three kids. And the older daughter had already had a reaction to the vaccines. So the pediatrician who was giving the injections phased hers in. But for the two younger boys, she gave a whole bunch of vaccines and even did catch-up on them, right? So more than they would typically schedule. And if you look at the vaccine schedule, how do we get more than 100 of these things if you, in America, by the time you're the age of 18? It's because they keep giving you the same shots over and over and over again for the same conditions. So obviously they don't believe that the vaccines, according to their theory, are training your immune system to be able to fight these pathogens that they're injecting it with. So they don't believe that, but they put in there to help to train your body. They put what they call adjuvants in. These are things that deliberately attack your immune system. Yes, what, Lance?
Just to continue on what you were saying about how they ignore the vaccine when they look at every other thing. Here's another example of that, where a peer-reviewed study examining vaccine timing and sudden infant death was removed from the scientific record.
That's right.
They made an argument that it was done with flawed method. The methodology was flawed, but instead of doing a retraction or correction, they just removed it entirely, which is very
That's
rare.
right. And they didn't do another one, right, either. Well, the case in Tennessee, what happened with that was the two boys got the full shots and get caught up on their shots all at once. Both of them went straight into the hospital into intensive care and nearly died. One of the boys got out after a couple of days. The youngest one was in for quite a long period of time. And when he got out, he had autism so severe that he can't even go to the bathroom himself. And then after that problem was created, the mother deserted them. And now the father has to take care of them, has to have a job to pay child support to the mother who has abandoned the children. She injured them and then abandoned them, and he has to pay her child support. That's what happened here in Tennessee. And when you look at that, why is that ignored? I mean, that is a clear case. It happened immediately that you had a situation where they give them all these vaccines, and look what happened to two of the three kids. And the other kid that it didn't happen to is because she phased it over a period of a couple of different visits. But the ones that she gave them to all at once had that same problem. And we have seen this over and over again, but it is a deliberate program to cover this up, just as they want to cover up the failure of chemotherapy and the success of these antiparasitics in terms of treating cancer. We've had report after report after report of that. Well, we're going to take a real quick break, folks, and we will be right back. Stay with us.
Analyzing the globalists' next move. And now, the David Knight Show.
Well, we had NATO, and Zelensky was front and center, meeting in Turkey, in the capital, Ankara. He is still insisting that Ukraine should be joining NATO. Zelensky doing a full court press, as Zero Hedge says. He wants to guarantee that there's going to be a wider war in Europe, and a war that would include the U.S. versus Russia as well, if he gets his way. Zelensky thanked the leaders, he said, quote, who have clearly stated Ukraine belongs in NATO because NATO with Ukraine is the alliance for the future. It would be an alliance for a future World War III. It is an alliance for a future of war, death, and destruction. He said, do you believe that it would be right to leave outside of NATO a country and a people that have this level of defensive capability? Well, take a look at what this war has done to Ukraine and to Russia. You can have that in your country as well. You can have a situation where you've got to basically Shanghai people to go fight on the front lines. They have very low life expectancy because of drones. And when you look at what was covered at the NATO meeting, everybody was talking about drone warfare. massive amounts of money and resources being put into drone warfare because all of the leaders want to have war. And they want to have a world war so they can have a global government. Ukraine has been boasting, but has also admitted that Ukraine needs assistance. Here we are again. Victory or victim? Do you need help? Oh, no, we don't need help. We're winning everything. But then they come back and say they got to have it. Yeah.
I have the video of Trump doing essentially that just recently at NATO with...
Yeah, go ahead, play it.
Drawdowns in Europe likely? And are you satisfied with the progress that NATO allies have made?
Well, we're going to see. I was very disappointed with NATO. And frankly, if it weren't held in Turkey, where my friend happens to be a very strong leader, a very strong person, it's possible that I...
That woman's voice here is a translator.
I felt I had to attend because of the fact that, I know he's gone all out. It was a big thing to have NATO come to Turkey or any place else. It's a big thing. But we weren't treated well because we did something in Iran. We don't need anybody's help. I didn't even want their help. But before I asked, they said they wouldn't be there. And we've invested trillions of dollars in NATO. Why? To protect European countries and others, Canada, etc., but to protect people, countries from, generally speaking, it used to be the Soviet Union, now it's Russia. And I say that's fine, but you would think that they'd be very willing to do something to help us. And they really weren't. In the case of the United Kingdom, the Prime Minister, I guess he's no longer there, maybe because of this. It was a very unpopular thing he did. He said, no, we'll help after the war is over. I said, I don't need that kind of help. We didn't need any help at all. And in a way, I was testing to see whether or not they'd be there, because I've long said that we helped them, but I'm not sure that they'd be there for us. And Italy turned us down, and Germany turned us down, and France turned us down.
But his real wrath was reserved for Spain. And he basically called out tariffs right there on the stage, because that's great about having that kind of power. The kind of power that he sees in communist dictators over and over again. He has that kind of power now because people have just rolled over and let him take it. Now, NATO membership, as Zero Hedge points out, would take the Ukraine crisis from a proxy war situation straight into World War III style direct war between Russia and NATO. And of course, that's going to be the path to world government. But Mark Rutte, the guy who betrayed his own country and is no longer prime minister there, he's the one who is touting literally billions of dollars invested to drastically ramp up NATO's drone capabilities, where they're talking about swarms of suicide drones, or they're talking about big budget items. And one of the drones is a high-end, high-altitude, long-endurance, uncrewed aircraft from Northrop Grumman. Wouldn't it be nice if our government cared as much about our infrastructure as they care about blowing up the infrastructure of other countries? Wouldn't it be nice if they actually were pro-life? Wouldn't it be nice if Christian voters were actually pro-life instead of only being concerned about the unborn, which they should be concerned about? Now they don't care if you kill older children. Well, thanks for joining us. The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.